Alrighty then, it is time to start another versus battle fight. Oh boy, another long one I could see. Well, today we're going to talk about Dio versus the Stone Ocean cast, aka Jolyne, Anasui, Emporio, Hermes, Foo Fighters, and Weather Report, and also Jotaro will be thrown in there. So, we're going to talk about the Stone Ocean cast, their scalings, how they would do against Dio from Stardust Crusaders, scaling Dio, just talking about how they fight, just the whole 9 yards, scaling how they would do if the Stone Ocean cast had to deal with Dio on their own terms. So, with that, it is time to cut the crap and actually start the video. First, I'm going to start to scale the main character of the part, aka the main JoJo of Stone Ocean, Jolyne Cujoh, a teenage girl with a very feisty attitude. Now, as for Jolyne Cujoh, she has the stand Stone Free. As for Stone Free, here are its stats. It's got some decent stats for the most part, some good strength and range and speed, and legitimately some stats that are actually pretty decent for the most part. Now, as for its ability, Stone Free's main ability is to unravel itself into small little strings. Now, not only Stone Free can do it, but Jolyne can also do it to herself as well, and can basically unravel her body so she can also turn herself into string as well, which her stand's also good at hearing stuff with said string as well. She can also use this stand to basically create traps with the string, and basically create small little webbings to trap people, or she can also shapeshift her body into stuff such as a Mobius strip in that one time against Seamoon. She can also use it in hand-to-hand combat stylings as well, and also has some hand-to-hand combat experience as well, since she actually used to be a member of a biker gang. And not only that, but she is also able to also sew up her own wounds, and can also do a lot of other stuff. And also Stone Free has a weird, and also smells like soap for some weird reason. But minus from that, another impressive feat from Stone Free is the fact that it was able to punch a meteor and destroy it. Now, I'm not going to scale it because I'm too lazy to scale a meteor at the moment. But however, the fact that Stone Free could actually destroy a meteor is a pretty impressive feat on its own. And not only that, but she is also durable enough, Jolyne, by the way, to take Jotaro Kujo Star Platinum's punch to the face and survive, and also not really take that much damage from the punch. So overall, that's Jolyne, and for the most part, most of her scaling tends to resolve more around her intelligence than her fighting style. I mean, she's a good fighter without a doubt, but most of her fights mostly resolve around her needing to use her brain over her power, which is kind of more unique, and this is why she's actually one of my favorite JoJo's, because she's not the typical having to run headfirst into battle thing. In fact, that's kind of why I like the later three protagonists, aka Josuke, Giorno, and Jolyne, not seen SBR yet. And to be honest, I think that those three are just better stand users because they use their stands in more creative ways. And I'd say Jolyne's probably the most creative stand user from what I've seen at the moment. And overall, that's her scaling. Now, the next character I'm going to scale is Foo Fighters, or FF for short. Now, as for Foo Fighters, she is a dead girl possessed by a bunch of plankton. I am not making that up. She can basically use her plankton, aka what is basically possessing her, as ways to fight. Now, how she uses it is she could basically create smaller planktons and basically fire them out like bullets. And she could also create clones of herself, and this was her original design, and oh my goodness, no. No. Dear God, no. Let's go back to the original design. There we go. Much better. Now, as for Foo Fighter stats, here are her stats. It's mostly her speed and her durability that tend to be her best moments. Now, I don't really have much Foo Fighters speed scaling, but she is around similar tier to someone like Jolyne, if not a bit faster. But however, durability scaling, She went against a guy named Kenzo. Now, if you don't know who he is, he was a minor antagonist from Part 6 who was an old man who drank his urine who was good at martial arts. Yeah, JoJo is very weird with its villain characters. But this is what Kenzo does to Foo Fighters in that fight. Yeah, this is coming from an old man who drinks his urine and does martial arts for a living. And he did this to Foo Fighters. And yet she was able to tank all of that. So, minus from getting her head open like a can, uh, she's probably the most durable member of the team. And not only that, but she is also a team healer as well, and can heal her own injuries like how Journo can. But her only catch is that she needs water to do so, because she's plankton. Plankton need water to live, all that stuff. And that's really all of Foo Fighters. Most of her powers can resolve mostly around her needing water. Without water, she's basically as good as useless. But if she has the water with her, then she's definitely going to be useful to the team, and she could actually help defeat Dio. So the next character we're going to be power scaling is Hermes, or Hermes, depending what you want to call her, Costello. Now, as for Hermes, this is her stand, Kiss. Now, Kiss has got some really good stats, actually. Most of them are A, except for its precision, and really that's kind of about it. It's got really good strength and speed and good range and good durability and potential, and its precision is just meh. But minus from that, it's a really solid stats. Now, Kiss's main ability is to use stickers, and if said stickers connect to something, it basically duplicates the item. Now, once said item is duplicated and once Hermes removes said sticker, the item smacks back together. And it's a really powerful ability with a lot of great usage, and Hermes has been seen using said ability to its best potential during her fights in the story. She realistically has some really good battle IQ and has been shown to use said good battle IQ in a lot of moments. And not only that, but she's very durable as she took a invisible zombie bite to the head, which shows that she does definitely tank a beating, which is something that most JoJo characters, in particular the Stone Ocean cast, can say they can do. And really, that's overall Hermes. She's got really nothing much of note to say, but that's really it to say about her, to be honest. Now, the next character that we will be scaling is Anasui. Now, as for Anasui's character, uh, he's creep, but his stand is Diver Down. Now, as for Diver Down's stats, here are what they look like. Some pretty good stats for the most part. Its strength and speed are really good. Its range sucks, granted. It's got mad durability, and its precision and potential are pretty good, which is pretty solid. Now, as for Diver Down's power, it kind of in the name, he dives down into stuff. I'm not making this up. It it's a simple name. It's simple yet effective. Diver Down's many usages can be used for, well, to attack people from the inside out, and he can also shield people with his attacks from the inside out from said attacks. He also has been seen to actually store objects with a single kick into parts of walls, which has never been really used much and doesn't really get much usage. I assume it's either something Araki forgot about, or maybe something that Anasui just didn't see, or maybe there wasn't just much usage in said story for the power to be used. I don't know. Really, we don't get to see the power much, so I'm not really going to count it here. But I'm going to talk about his main powers into diving stuff. So, another great usage of Diver Down, and this is basically Anasui probably at his best in the story, was the fact that he basically was the reason behind the group making it as far as they did against Pucci. Like, granted, Jotaro is a powerful character and he can do really good, but in the fight against Pucci, Pucci legitimately slit Jotaro's throat and came severely close to actually killing Jotaro himself. If it wasn't for Anasui and his diver down, Jotaro would have died a lot of times in the fight, and realistically would have probably meant that Pucci would have won had Anasui not actually used his stand. So without Anasui around, it's likely to assume Jotaro would have died against Pucci in a lot of occasions in the final fight with Made in Heaven. But really, Anasui's biggest con is the fact that he's only willing to do stuff if it's for Jolyne's sake. Now, a big example was against Keicho, where Anasui refused to help Foo Fighters any in that fight, or against D&G. And instead, he stayed with Jolyne, and basically, whenever Jolyne was about to be harmed or killed, he basically dived inside of her to protect her. And then when it came to Foo Fighters, he just didn't care about her and just left her to die. So, realistically, that's his only con, in that he's not really a team player, per se, and he's honestly kind of useless if it's compared to other characters. He'll only help as long as it benefits him for Jolyne. And another fun fact is that Diver Down can canonically change genders, as Anasui did and was introduced as a female when he was first seen in Part 6. It's likely that he was never intended to change the gender. Araki just changed the gender. And as for why he changed the gender, Rocky actually never intended Anasui to be a girl. It was just one of those early design things, like how Josuke was made to be buff in the first design he was in. But overall, that's all of Anasui's powers, and overall, probably he's one of the strongest on the team, to be honest. Since there's a lot of characters, he realistically could be the team's strongest member. Probably not the strongest, but near to, probably third or fourth strongest. Now, the next character I will be scaling is Weather Report. Now, as for Weather Report, here is his stand, Weather Report. Yeah, it's the same name as him. He's an amnesiac and he forgot his own name because Pucci stole his memories. But as for Weather Report's stats, here are his stats. Pretty decent stats, to say the least. His strong points are really in his strength, durability, and potential. His speed is really good. His range is meh, and his precision sucks. But minus from that, Weather Report does have a decent and probably the strongest stand from the group if we're comparing to Jotaro. And I'm going to be honest, Weather might be the strongest. Now, as for Weather Report's powers, Weather Report can basically manipulate the weather to his own usage. He can basically create air and clouds to protect himself. He can use fire and basically use that as a power. He can use electricity to basically zap people. There's been times where he actually transformed people from the inside out into water and explode them from using the water inside of their bodies. He's also been able to use tornadoes, which he can go around the fastest, which was around 300 kilometers per hour, to my knowledge, which basically means he has a powerful ability and can basically create the fastest tornado. Not the fastest, but recreate it. And not only that, but he's also been able to rain frogs and basically rain any other animals. And he's basically able to rain poisonous frogs as well, which is basically his best ability when it comes to raining animals. But this isn't really Weather Report at his absolute best. Now, let's talk about Heavy Weather. Heavy Weather, same design as Weather Report, and Heavy Weather is basically Weather Report with his memories back, so he's West Bloomer right now. Now, as for his stats, here they are. Now, to be honest, they're basically the same. The strength and speed and range are all the same here. But however, Weather Report's ability is just too overpowered that realistically I don't see anyone from Part 6 being able to defeat him. And that's Heavy Weather. Now, Heavy Weather's ability is to create rainbows and snails. And if you look into the rainbows or touch the snails or touch the rainbows, you transform into a snail. Yeah, you transform into a snail. Now, it basically is a very powerful ability because it can basically turn your enemies into snails, so you can basically overpower them and kill them. But there is a real complaint in that your teammates can also get affected by this. So if Weather Report, by some weird reason, wants to use heavy weather during this fight, he's got to be cautious because he's got his teammates. And the only way to stop heavy weather is to basically kill Weather Report to undo the effects. And as for how to stop heavy weather, well, it has one weakness. Heavy weather actually affects your sight, and your mind to be exact. So, in other words, heavy weather basically manipulates you to believe that you are a snail, but in all actuality, you're not a snail. You're just believing that you are a snail because he tricks around with your mind. Hence why Pucci actually removed his sight during the battle, just so Weather Report actually wouldn't be able to turn him into a snail in the fight. And realistically, that's all of Weather Report. He's probably the most overpowered member of the team, and I think out from anyone of the team, if not counting Jotaro, he would probably put up the biggest struggle against Dio, mainly due to the fact that Heavy Weather is just a super overpowered stand that it could realistically overpower Dio. Weather Report alone is debatable, but I do think Heavy Weather could. And that's all about Weather Report. Now, normally this would be where I scale Jotaro, but to be honest, we already know how strong Jotaro is, so what would be the point of scaling him? He has Star Platinum, he's super strong and fast, he's super durable, he could stop time, he's basically Jotaro, he's overpowered. Yeah, we already know how strong Jotaro is. I'm gonna skip him. And realistically, that's just all the Stone Ocean characters scaled. So now we're gonna have to scale Dio, which is gonna be my first ever time doing it, believe it or not. Now it is time to scale everyone's favorite JoJo villain, the one and only vampire himself, Dio. Now, as for Dio, his origin story is that he was basically the Joestar's first ever nemesis, ever since the events of Phantom Blood, where he went against Jonathan. So now, generations later, it's time for Dio to go against these new group of Joestars. So, as for Dio's stand, his stand will be known as the World. Now, as for the World, here are its stats. Honestly, some really good stats. Strength, speed, range, potential, durability, they're all really good, with some B's, but mostly A's. And to be honest, it also does scale around Star Platinum when it comes to a lot of stuff. And realistically, Dio is actually around Jotaro's tier, so I would assume Dio is probably one of the strongest villains. Probably not the strongest per se, but he's near that list. Now for Dio's stand power, he only really has one power, and that's the power to stop time. Now Dio can only really stop time depending on the form. Like base can stop time for 5 seconds, and then high Dio can stop it for 9 seconds. So assuming that that's gonna be the rough estimations we'll be using for this fight. Dio's time stop is basically not in real life, and it basically goes by anime logic. And Dio can realistically do anything in time stopped. He can punch a hole through your stomach violently and send you falling back very far away. He can also throw stuff like knives at you as long range attacks. Or if Dio's just wanting to play as an idiot, he can just time stop and then just move you downstairs just to play a prank on you. Which is... he could have been a lot smarter in Stardust Crusaders, I can admit. And realistically, High Dio is just a more boosted up version of Dio. And as for how High Dio gets activated, is he needs Joestar blood to give him that form. And to be fair, with two Joestars on the team, he's gonna have enough Joestar blood, so he could maybe use one of them, like Jotaro or Jolyne, to boost up. And overall, that is Dio scaling. He's probably near the strongest JoJo villains. Strongest maybe stretching it a little bit, but to be honest, he is near the top tier strongest. And not only that, but there's also the scaling of the Stone Ocean cast. So now we're going to start the battle, and we're going to scale, and we're going to talk about who would ultimately win this fight. So in this timeline, it is 1988 or 89, and Jolyne Cujoh is basically related to Joseph some other way. But however, Jotaro is told by Joseph that Holly, Joseph's daughter slash Jotaro's sister in this timeline, Holly's daughter Jolyne is imprisoned because she's possessed by an evil spirit. Yes, I know this is Jotaro's entire story, but I'm just gonna use it as Jolyne instead, and instead Jotaro's her uncle. Or maybe Jotaro's her dad still, and I don't know. Something happens. So Jotaro does look into Jolyne and finds out that Jolyne has her Standstone free. And basically Jotaro realizes the only way to get her out, because Jolyne's trying to protect herself from other people, is to basically get brute force. So Jotaro just uses Star Platinum and realistically does take Jolyne out and is able to get her out of the prison cell. Mainly due to the fact that Jotaro most likely is going to take it easy on her, and basically Star Platinum would go easy and probably be able to defeat Stonefree in a fight. So Jotaro is likely just going to beat Jolyne there. Now in this timeline, Joseph will not be a member of the Stardust Crusaders. Well, the replacement for the Stardust Crusaders. Maybe in this timeline he becomes senile a lot earlier or something. Who knows? And maybe the Speedwagon Foundation are the ones who find out and are basically the ones to inform Jotaro about Jolyne and Dio. So that is probably going to be how the part starts off in this timeline. Now, like in canon, Holly will still end up being sick, and since Jolyne is Holly's daughter in this timeline, she's going to get angry and she's going to try to save her mom, and that's going to lead to her and Jotaro going on the adventure and then meeting the likes of Foo Fighters, Hermes, Anasui, and Weather Report, and they'll just meet them along the ways in some mysterious way, I guess. As for what Dio would do in this timeline, well, I think if knowing how Dio was in the original canon, he wouldn't view them as threats and would just send out his minions. So he'd probably just send out the Know-It-Alls or the Whole Horses, those kind of villains, and just assume that they're going to be taken care of. But the Stone Ocean cast is basically a lot stronger than the Stardust Crusaders in a lot of ways because they just have more busted abilities. So it's likely they're probably just going to blitz through the enemies the Stardust Crusaders had to face during that part. So I would assume that they will end up probably winning all those fights. So I'm probably just going to skip those fights. But name an enemy stand in the comments. You can maybe name all the Stardust Crusaders enemies if you want, and I could say who could probably defeat which one and how they would. But yeah, I could see the Stone Ocean cast being able to defeat a lot of those villains. Now let's go to Dio's castle because I don't think no one wants to go through this whole monologue of the other villains, so I'm just going to skip to that. So first fight is going to be Younger Darby, like in canon. And as for who's going to be taken away by Younger Darby, I would probably just have it be Jolyne and Jotaro, like how Joseph and Jotaro were. And one of the Jobros would join her, most likely Anasui, hence mainly due to the fact that he's always around trying to be with Jolyne. So it's likely he's probably gonna go and try to stop it first, and get dragged into the world with Jotaro to fight Younger Darby, which probably just leads to the same fight with Anasui taking Kakyoin's spot, and Jolyne probably taking Jotaro's spot in that fight. And Jolyne probably would have video game experience, unlike Jotaro, in my opinion. Now, this technically means that leaves Hermes, Foo Fighters, and Weather Report with Vanilla Ice. And as for Vanilla Ice, his stand is Cream, and Cream is probably the strongest stand behind the world in Stardust Crusaders, as it has the power to eat you alive and basically send you to an endless void. So, in other words, it's basically if you get hit by Cream, it's a one shot, unless it's not too fatal, like if you lose a hand or foot. But legitimately, in most case scenarios, you're probably not going to be fast enough. And I don't see any of the Stone Ocean cast probably being able to be fast enough to get out of Cream alive, so I think someone's gonna die here. As for unlikely casualty, I'm going to assume Hermes will be the one killed. Just assumption, and it's not a guaranteed. I'm just gonna say Hermes dies for the sake of the story. So Cream kills Hermes like how he killed Abdal originally, which leaves Foo Fighters and Weather Report to fight Vanilla Ice. And I'm going to say Weather and Foo Fighters would win. Foo Fighters is a healer, so it's likely any body part Weather Report loses in said fight could be healed back on. Weather Report could do something similar to how Polnareff and Iggy did by using Fog to track down where Cream is. It's likely Vanilla Ice probably could be burnt away with fire, They could find a way to reveal Vanilla Ice's weakness as Sun a lot earlier. It's hard for them to do so, but I think it's possible. Maybe if Foo Fighters shoots the plankton bullets fatally enough into the head, it could technically kill Vanilla Ice. Um, Most likely Vanilla Ice would be killed by Foo Fighters and Weather Report. I do think Foo and Weather are going to make it out with only one casualty. So now we're going to get to the introduction of Dio like in canon. So Dio would show himself off, would probably be very cocky, and would stop time and move Weather and Foo Fighters down the steps like he did with Polnareff because, Dio is very cocky like that. Which Jolyne, Anasui, and Jotaro would break down the wall and reveal that they're alive and they defeated younger Darby, so they basically go after them, and then they find out Hermes is dead, which probably make Jolyne a little sad because Hermes was her best friend during the part, but she probably would carry on. It's not like she'd be super depressed if Hermes died. Now, something I do want to say is that someone's going to die to reveal the world's power. So, the only reason they were able to find out the world's power was because Kakyoin's 20-meter Emerald Splash, and that was realistically the only way they could have. Since, I mean, not really the only way, but that was the only potential way, and Kakyoin thought of the idea as basically their only hope. So, realistically, putting the Stone Ocean Squad in there, what's likely to happen? Well, this is going to be very controversial, but it's likely that Jolene's going to be the one having to do it. For starters, she was very intelligent like Kakyoin, and not only that, but her stand was also very similar to how it worked, so realistically she could have set up a string trap that would leave Dio stuck and to stop time. Maybe something like holding him down, and then when time stops, Dio would then stop time and then donut Jolyne. After he donuts Jolyne, time resumes and Jolyne is sent flying into the water tower, where she uses the last bit of her power to hit the clock tower. But on a side note, it's possible for her to survive. For starters, Foo Fighters could heal her with water, because if Foo Fighters maybe travels with Jolyne, and that could realistically mean she could just heal Jolyne with her plankton because of the water tower water, so that means Jolyne has a chance of survival. There's also a chance Anasui could be there, and he could just use Diver down inside of Jolyne to tank the attack, which would either lead to Anasui dying instead, or maybe both of them dying from the attack. It's hard to say. I don't know if Jolyne would survive. It's likely someone's gonna die against Dio, and it's either Jolyne or Anasui going to be the one dying here. But leaving it to FF, Jotaro, and Weather Report, I think those three alone could defeat Dio, assuming Jolyne and Weather and Anasui are non-factors, or both of them, or one of them are not. Even if Dio becomes High Dio, like assuming Jolyne does die and he absorbs her blood, I still believe that Jotaro was able to be in like in canon. Weather Report is very. Foo Fighters is the only one I don't see being able to defeat Hideo, granted. Weather Report's potentially able to do it, and Jotaro is a guaranteed win against Dio because Dio was kind of an idiot. I mean, not kind of, he was an idiot. He had probably the worst battle IQ in all of JoJo. But however, when Stardust Crusaders end, it basically ends with only one person in the sky, and that's Hermes. But there's a chance it's like two or three. Maybe Jolyne or Anasui or both die. That's like the only real way I could see Time Stop being revealed by Dio. Like, Jolene's got to be that one, unfortunately. And that would probably be it if the Stone Ocean Cash just replaces the Stardust Crusaders. So, realistically, overall, Dio would lose. But let's do another fun scenario, and this is a very interesting case scenario. Now let's talk about the alternative scenario to come out of it, and a very unique one. So let's go back to part 6, and now we're at the point where Pucci is getting ready to obtain heaven, but instead of obtaining might in heaven, he resurrects Dio. Assuming the sea moon just turns and summons out the green baby and undoes all that and becomes Dio again. Pucci's glad to see his best friend, only for Dio to kill him, basically revealing that Pucci was only just there so Dio could come back at the end. And that would basically just lead to Dio versus the remaining Stone Ocean cast. Jotaro, Jolyne, Anasui, Hermes, and Emporio. All 5 of them. Including Emporio with the Weather Report disc as well, by the way. By the way, Foo Fighters and Weather Report are both going to be non-factors in this since they died before the final fight. So in this, they're not going to count, and they're already dead canonically in this. So we get to Dio and Jotaro, and they basically start fighting off each other because, of course, that's going to be the first thing they do. As for how this fight would go, it'd mostly be barrages, with Jotaro getting the upper hand on some hands, and Dio getting the upper hand on other hands, with some of the cast obviously trying their best to help Jotaro, but probably just getting taken out by Dio very quickly. Now, it's likely it's just going to mostly be based around the idea of Jotaro versus Dio, the rematch. And as for the ending of the fight, it's going to end the same way it does in canon. Jotaro is going to kill Dio. Because realistically, Dio's just too cocky. I do not see him winning against Jotaro. And Jotaro, Jolyne, Hermes, Anasui, and not Weatherport, but Emporio, they all get a happy ending, and they get to basically not see the universe get reset in front of their eyes, and they basically get a happy ending at the end. But let's talk about an alternative scenario to come out of it. So let's assume it still happens, big stand clash, but instead Jotaro is the one who dies. So Dio overpowers him in this timeline. After this, Dio's obviously going to absorb Jotaro's blood to become High Dio again. What does that change? Well, whoever is dead around, they're kind of screwed. Hermes probably tries to go after him, but then gets killed. Anasui tries to do something with Daira down to protect the others, but ultimately is going to die. And then Jolyne dies. So this is going to leave to the ultimate question: Emporio with Weather Report versus High Dio. Emporio puts the disc in his head, and we get the ultimate clash between him and Dio. How does it go? Well, Dio beats the crap out of Emporio and kills him. I don't see Emporio winning this, especially if this was base Dio. I don't see, like, no matter which Dio it is, except if it's like Phantom Blood or something, there's no way I see Emporio actually beating or even coming close to killing Dio. So realistically, Emporio is going to realize nothing works and that everything has basically failed, even though he's tried his best with Weather Report. Dio delivers the final beatdown, kills Emporio, and Dio basically rules the world, basically creating his ultimate happy ending. That's if Dio is able to overpower Jotaro in the final battle. So in conclusion, if we're going with the route where the Stone Ocean cast just replaced the Stardust Crusaders, then I feel like the Stone Ocean group would still make it out alive because they got Jotaro. And it's just likely there would probably be some casualties. And if we go the route where it's basically Dio being resurrected, then it's likely, depending. If Jotaro is able to win that final stand clash, then it's likely almost everyone survives except, not Hermes, but Foo Fighters and Weather Report. It's possible maybe Hermes or Anasui could die at the end. If we're going with the route where Jotaro dies and then everyone else dies, leaving Emporio versus Dio, like with Pucci, I don't see Emporio winning, and Dio's just gonna kill him. So, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Like how my other versus battles, this is a long one, but I hope it was fun. And thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!